Hello and welcome. My name is Jess and you're listening to Legaltini, your very own sip of law school. The goal of this podcast is to give you just a taste of what it's like going to law school. Whether you're already in school, considering it, have a loved one currently experiencing the fun that is law school, or you just want to follow my journey, I'm so glad you're here. You can also follow me on Instagram at legaltini_podcast and check out my website legaltini.com. And if you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to rate and review below. Grab your Legaltini and let's take a sip. Hello friends and good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Legaltini. I am really jazzed about what I have to talk about today, even though it's kind of a tough topic. I want to go through, I have 4 points today. You know how I love a good bullet pointed list, but I want to talk about mental strength during hard times. And I know that I've talked about a lot of mental health things and a lot of kind of how-tos of how to, stay positive during hard times. I just think that it is the most important element of going through something that you're intentionally putting yourself through, like law school or a really tough job or marathon training or whatever it is that you might be up against right now. The mental game is, I don't know, maybe 90% of the battle in my mind. So that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I love to kind of focus on because I think that you can accomplish anything with the right attitude. So I've got 4 points, I guess, that I want to make about mental strength during hard times. And I am, of course, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not an expert on, the science behind our minds. I think it's fascinating and I love learning about it. But I think what I have experienced in being, part of the healthcare world during COVID and just generally having some tough jobs and now going through law school, I am realizing that these are things that I had been doing over that time that really either saved me or that I wasn't doing that really kind of broke me. And so I want to go through these things, take it or leave it, obviously, but these are some things that really helped me and have helped me, and I want to share that with you because I think it's so incredibly important to keep positive and keep your mindset right and keep yourself open to new ideas and new chances. And it's easy to kind of close ourselves off and when you're stressed, just kind of tunnel down and get this focused vision where you can't see outside of your world, you can't see outside of yourself. Everything is so consuming where you are. But honestly, and maybe you'll believe me or agree with me after this podcast, but allowing yourself to see outside of that is a really big part of having mental strength during a really hard time. And law students are traditionally terrible at this. We are not great at diversifying the things that we're thinking about and stressing about. So, it is tough, but I'm hearing a lot of people at school these days that are really starting to feel that burnout. Like I talked about last week, that new car smell is gone. The motivation is starting to ebb a little bit. And it is tougher now to keep going and keep pushing forward at the same rate that we were doing for the last month and a half. Oh, well, actually, almost 2 months. Wow, almost 2 months. So it's definitely getting tougher to keep that momentum going because we're tired. We're tired. And so law school students traditionally are pretty stressed out and pretty overwhelmed with everything because the reading that we have to do is substantial and the pressures and sort of the expectations are very high in school and for ourselves because we tend to be learners that have very high expectations for ourselves. It's a tough situation to be in, but I think that it is possible to go through this, not without stress because that's absurd. We can't go through life without stress, but we can go through this with a healthy approach to stress and mental strength during stress. So that's my perspective, and I think that obviously it's easier said than done. You can't just decide to have mental strength. That's something that you build. But I've got some ways to do that, and I've got some tactics for you that I'll share towards the end of the podcast, and I've got I don't know, just some things that have helped me. So if you're in law school, or if you're doing something similar to law school that's difficult and challenging, then this, hopefully will help you to kind of view things and have a perspective that can lend itself to mental strength. So the first thing, and I talked about this actually last week on my podcast, but the first thing I want to say is avoid burnout seriously at all costs. It's rough. It's not fun. Don't just think that you can push through and that you're able to do it because you've done other hard things. I get it. I was there. And my body really took a toll, and my mind really took a toll from that. So if I can give you one piece of advice, it is just avoid it at all costs. Our bodies are not intended to sustain that kind of push for more than just a little while. Certainly push yourself, and actually I talk about that a little bit later in today's podcast, but recognize that you're not a superhuman. You need balance just like the rest of us. So there are 3 kind of subcategories within burnout that I want to talk about. 1 is compartmentalizing, 2 is taking intentional breaks, and then 3 is knowing what to stress about. So the first one, compartmentalizing, you've probably heard this before, but learn to separate stressors from fun stuff. If you're feeling stressed, recognize that that's not your significant other that's causing that anxiety, and let them off the hook. Don't, make that biting comment at them. Don't blame it on them if, something at work is really stressing you out. It's easy to do because that's the person that you tend to see the most or be with the most. And so it's easy to kind of let them be your punching bag, and that's not fun for anyone. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of that, you know that it feels really unfair. So compartmentalizing means that in your mind you understand that yes, I am stressed, but when you take a break, or when you are not at work or not at school or not doing that thing that is stressful, allow yourself to feel the joys and feel the fun of the other things that you're doing. Otherwise, you just carry that stress with you through every part of life, and then every part of life suddenly feels really big and stressful. And it's easier said than done, I will say that, but find a way to sort of, whether it's on your drive home or on your walk home, or whatever, whatever space and time you have in between work. If you're working from home, then that is a tough part of this, but maybe do like a quick 2-minute, just close your eyes and meditate and say like, the workday is over. I'm moving past this. Whatever you need to do to physically compartmentalize that space from the space you're about to walk into, do that, because it's easy to let it just kind of encompass your entire life and take over, and that's where you really get into burnout, because you're never letting it go. So that's the first one, compartmentalizing. The second one, taking intentional breaks. If while you're taking breaks, you're just stressed about the work you need to do, you are not actually taking a break, and you're not actually giving your body the rest that it needs. A break should be dedicated, intentional, should be revitalizing. The definition actually of a break is an interruption of continuity or uniformity, or a stopping of proceedings in order to have a pause. So you need to actually interrupt your work and stop. It will do wonders, I promise, for your mental clarity and ability to keep moving forward without burnout, and keep achieving things and keep learning and keep pressing forward without that element of burnout. If you're not taking breaks, you really should consider it. And I don't mean an hour for lunch. I mean taking a significant amount of time off where you're doing something else that you love to do, whether that's pulling out the old paint and canvas, or pulling out your guitar, or going on a walk in the park, or calling a friend and literally FaceTiming for 2 hours. Love to do that, mostly with my sister. And it is so revitalizing to just think about something else and to sort of wander away a little bit, and just kind of aimlessly if it needs to be, but just wander away for a while so that you can give your body and your mind a break, and a true break. So taking intentional breaks, that is a big one in avoiding burnout. The last one here is knowing what to stress about. And there are some things that you just you don't have to stress about. You just don't need to. I actually did a whole podcast several weeks ago on the first week of school and what you do need to stress about, and then what you absolutely just don't need to stress about. So check that one out if you're, struggling with this or not knowing how to sort of let things go and just let it lie. Knowing what to stress about can be really life-giving, because sometimes we're just holding our bodies and we're clenching our jaws and our shoulders are kind of rising up towards our ears because we're just holding all of this tension and stress. And if we can just physically unclench and physically let our bodies relax a little bit and identify the things that are worth stressing about, but then also identify the things that are maybe just bogging us down and just aren't serving us, because it doesn't need to be stressful. Think about what those things might be in your life and maybe try to find some things that you can say, let me dial down the stress about that. It's just not that pivotal in my space right now. So that is burnout. The next sort of category is have a posse you can count on. And within this category, I want to talk about asking for help, offering help, and expressing your emotions. First of all, ask for help. I mean, I know that is so hard to do if you are a type A personality and feel like you generally can handle things and you generally can do things. If you're hitting a wall in life where you are not feeling that way in this moment, that's really okay. And that's a beautiful thing to finally be in a space where you need to ask for help. Even if you just need help staying accountable, or if you need encouragement, if you need a wake-up call on an important day to make sure you're up and out of bed, you need to ask your people for help. And if you don't feel like you have reliable people around you, you should focus on being that way for other people to develop those relationships. Maybe you can rekindle an old friendship, reach out to people you haven't been close to lately, but that you used to be close to. Do they know what your new adventures are? Do you know what theirs are? But chances are you've got some folks around you that if you ask for help, they're going to jump, right? They're going to say, absolutely, what can I do to support you? I know you're going through some challenging times, or I know that you're really pushing right now in school. Chances are you've got people, ask them for help, and they're going to be there for you. And the other element that kind of is the flip side of that is offering help. An excellent way to step outside of your stress is to find ways to serve other people. This helps you to see that there are other things going on outside of your world. And it's also really rewarding to give to other people. If you're not familiar with that feeling, I challenge you to find something every day this week to do for someone else. It doesn't have to be anything major, just a little something. Could be offering to do a chore, a word of encouragement maybe to someone that you see working hard, buying a coffee for the car behind you, or picking up a treat on your way home for your roommate. Whatever it is, just something little. I promise you will feel immediately better. There is something about giving to other people, being selfless. There is something about that truly, it's enlightening. I don't know what the word is, but it makes you kind of realize that you're not at the center of the universe and you're not the only thing in the world that's going on right now. And that makes our stress feel a little bit smaller and it feel a little bit less daunting and overwhelming. So ask for help, but also offer that help, and you will be really rewarded by that. The third element of having kind of your posse that you can count on is expressing your emotions. Don't bottle it in. Talk about your emotions. Find a friend or a therapist or a journal even, and just get these emotions out. Even if they make no sense and it's a tangled mess, you're just a jumble of crisscross feelings. Part of processing is just getting it all out on the table where you can see it, and everything feels less scary once you've said it out loud and you can read it on paper. I mean, sometimes we have some big emotions to work through and some big things, and that can be really intense, and sometimes you don't have the emotional space or mental capacity to do that while you're in a really stressful time. So, don't necessarily go overboard with that and unpack some really big stuff during a time of stress, but the emotions that you're feeling about your present situation and the things that are kind of going on around you right now, talk about those things, whether it's with really good friends or even just with people that are going through similar things. I mean, my peers at school and I talk all the time about the stressors of school and the things that are going on, and it's so nice to just be able to kind of chit chat about it and get it all out and say, oh my gosh, did you read this for, crim law tomorrow? It's so long, it's so stressful, and everybody's saying like, oh yeah, me too. It's really a kind of nice back and forth where you can express that and get that out, and then you can let it go. So those are the 3 categories under having your posse: is ask for help, offer help, and express your emotions. Don't hold on to it. Don't bottle it in. That never goes well. It always ends up coming out somewhere. The third big header topic under mental strength and kind of how to go through tough things is understanding why you're here. And this is when we get a little bit existential. So you know how I do that a little bit. Bear with me, but understanding why you're here and where you fit into all of this, and, revisiting that why as often as you need to, all of that kind of plugs into considering realities outside of yourself. So understand where you sit in the scheme of what you're doing, whether that's at work or at school, within your family, your community. Understand how the world is just bigger than your day-to-day stress, and consider stepping outside of yourself a little bit and viewing that. A mountain, when you look at it from far away, looks a lot smaller. But when you're in it, the mountains are all around you, right? Like it's overwhelming, it's here, it's big, it's daunting. But when you can take a step back and kind of view it from the outside in, it can just be less intimidating. So allow yourself to see how the world is just bigger than the scenario that you're in right now. But also, my second point under this is to see where you fit into that picture and consider your role, and also consider what you want your role to be. If you're not pleased with what your role is now, make a change. What are your goals for the next few years, the next 5 years? What steps do you need to take in order to get to that goal? And I know that is a big conversation, and especially when you're going through something hard, it's kind of hard to think about the next thing. But sometimes thinking about that next thing can allow you to feel like this tough thing that you're part of is part of a process, and it's not just this end goal, I'm going to be in this forever. It's part of my journey, and it's part of who I'm becoming, and it's strengthening me for these future things that I want to do that are, maybe a little bit tougher to achieve or harder even to do. And so this hard thing, this hard work that we're putting in right now is what's building us and kind of creating who we are and who we're going to be. And that person is going to be strong enough to do those things we want to do. So see how you fit into the picture, where you want to be, and use that as giving yourself the momentum and the motivation to do the things that you're doing now. And revisit that why. Talk about it, think about it, look at it as many times as you need. Literally tape it to your forehead if you need to. Get a tattoo on the inside of your arm. I don't know what you need to do. That might be extreme. I definitely didn't recommend that to you. But revisit that why and really feel motivated by it. And if it's a why that's not motivating you, spend some time rewriting it and really getting to the core of why you're doing this. And if you can't find a why about what you're doing, why are you doing it? Consider doing something else. If this is not truly what you want to do, don't burn yourself to the ground for something that you are not passionate about. The last section that I have for you on today's podcast is tactics to build mental strength, and I have 4 for you. The first one is listen to yourself. When you have a gut reaction to something, spend some time considering why you reacted that way. Even if it has nothing to do with, your work or your school or whatever is the main stressor in your life right now. If you have a gut reaction to like the drive-through person and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Spend some time considering why you reacted that way. Are you stressed about something else? Are you angry that other people are taking time for themselves and taking time off when you don't feel like you can? Because that's me. Are you insecure about your contributions to work? Are you feeling like you're not welcomed where you work? Are you feeling like people aren't grateful for the efforts that you're putting in? What is it that caused you to have that reaction to someone? And if you dive in and kind of unpack some of that, you might realize, oh, I'm kind of holding on to some anger, or I'm holding on to some anxiety from something that I'm not even a part of anymore. or I was really hurt by this experience that I had, and I don't think I ever really addressed that. And maybe there's some people you need to talk to or apologize to or kind of air out those feelings. Listen to yourself, because if you're feeling those things and you're bottling them up because you didn't express them or truly process them, they're going to come out somewhere. Somehow your body is going to express that and get that out. And if you listen to yourself and kind of understand and take some time to evaluate your thoughts and actions and behaviors, you'll probably find, oh, that makes sense because of this situation. I cannot tell you how many times I have sat myself down and been like, okay, girl, you are acting this way because of this. And being able to just kind of walk yourself through that and take the time. Honestly, it takes time to just think through and process those emotions. So listen to yourself and do that, because you're doing yourself a favor when you do that. The second tactic is recognizing when you're being pushed. This was what I was referencing earlier, but recognize and decide to be grateful for the ways that you are expanding and growing and changing and climbing that mountain, whatever you're doing. I think we collectively need to stop resenting that growth. It's hard, and sometimes it's not fun. If you've ever trained for a race or, trained in the gym or whatever physical training, if you've ever done something like that, you will know that growth is not easy. It's not like you just wake up one day and you're like, oh yeah, I think today I'll run 19 miles. Or, it's not easy. And I think we grow to resent that feeling of growth and expansion because it's hard, but really it's beautiful. And if you can recognize that, okay, I'm expanding, my horizons are changing, I am growing, honestly, it's beautiful. And I felt that way a lot during COVID when I was being challenged every single day. I felt like I was having to do harder and harder things. And I recognized, though, that this is so hard and I am growing from this and I am achieving something. And at that point, I didn't even really know I wanted to go to law school, but I knew that whatever I was going to do, this is preparing me for that. And this is creating in me the work ethic. It's giving me weird knowledge about pathogens and epidemiology that I was never really interested in learning or thought that I needed to learn. I think we all experienced that with COVID, that there were just some elements of viral diseases that we just never really hoped or thought to learn. And yet here we are. So I just decided that this stress in my life was for a purpose, and there was something larger going on here that it was preparing me for. And I don't even know if that was law school or if it's something after law school that it kind of gave me the impetus to want to go and do that. So whatever it is, that it might be preparing you for, just recognize that you're being pushed and expanded, and that is a beautiful and exciting thing. And on that vein, the third tactic that I have is to spin everything to the positive. This doesn't mean go be happy-go-lucky and just think the world is your oyster and everything is lovely and butterflies and rainbows. Obviously, that's not the case. If you can kind of write down the things that are stressing you out or that are going on in your life right now, spin it to the positive. What I mean by that is, let's say that there's 10 things in your life right now that are just kind of on the surface stressing you out. So let's write those 10 things down. We've got school, we've got bills piling up, we've got relationship things, we've got friends that are going through other things in life, we've got family that's going through things, we all have at least 10 things in our lives that I would say could contribute to stress at any moment, right? So take each of those things and consider what the positives are about that. I actually still have journal entries that I wrote during COVID, and I just wrote out all the things that were stressing me out. And then for each of them, I went back and I said, what is positive about this? And sometimes it was, I'm learning new things every day, or well, not to get too specific, but like I had some friends that were going through some really tough stuff. And so I had to figure out, okay, they are learning this and they are creating this. And I had to just kind of get creative about the positives about the situation. Let's say that you just hate the job that you're in. What are you learning from it? What are you learning not to do if you ever run a business or if you ever manage people? What things are you learning and how are you growing? How can I spin this to the positive? It doesn't mean that the overall situation is positive. It doesn't mean that it's all fine and dandy. It just means that there is something coming from this that can be intentional and can be important. And that's okay. That's okay that something positive comes out of something negative. Spinning it to the positive, I find, just helps to sort of mentally acknowledge that good things can still come of that. The last tactic I have is exercise different muscles. So whatever that means for you, if that's physical muscles, that can seriously reduce stress and help you build mental strength. When I trained for a marathon, I learned so much about mental strength and mental sort of capacity for things and just being able to do more than you think you can do. So exercise maybe physical muscles, creative muscles. So if you're doing something at work or at school or in life that is not like a creative outlet, find a creative outlet. Our bodies and our minds want to be creative. And so even if that's just drawing on a piece of scratch paper, or if it's pulling out some paint and canvas or whatever it is, find something creative to do. It can even be musical. It can be writing a poem. It can be writing cards to people and decorating the card, whatever you want to do. Something that sort of gets those creative juices flowing. There's also emotional muscles, it sounds weird, but you can exercise those muscles. You've got spiritual, you can go any avenue that you want to go, but do something sort of converse to what is stressing you out. So if you're training for a marathon and that's your hard thing, do the other things, right? Like exercise those other muscles and give your body sort of like a juxtaposition to what you're doing right now. And that will help you to recognize how to build mental strength in a different way. And it will inherently help you in whatever way that you're experiencing stress. So those are my 4 sort of large header items about how to have mental strength during hard times. So avoiding burnout, compartmentalizing, taking breaks, knowing what to stress about and what to not stress about, having that posse that you can count on, asking for help and offering help, expressing your emotions, don't bottle it in. And then the third one was understanding why you're here, see how it's bigger than you and how you fit into the picture, and use that why as much as you need to, and rewrite it if you have to. And then the last one we just went over was the tactics to build mental strength. So listen to yourself, recognize when you are being expanded and pushed, spin everything to the positive when you can, and then exercise different muscles. Kind of get out there and try something different, and your body will thank you. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a really fun podcast for me to record and to talk about. It's something that I find, again, to be very, very important. So if you enjoyed this, please rate and review below. And don't forget to check out my Instagram, which is @Legaltini_podcast. And check out my website. Also, if you haven't been on there yet, there are some fun resources on there that you might enjoy. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Legaltini, your very own sip of law school.